I never thought I'd find myself in this position, torn between loyalty to my best friend and the emotional baggage of my past. Life has a way of throwing curveballs that make you question everything you thought you knew about yourself, about others, and about the relationships that matter most. This is one of those moments for me. When I say that I don't want to be the maid of honor at my best friend's wedding, it sounds selfish, maybe even petty, but it's more complicated than that. She's marrying my ex, and I don't know how to reconcile my feelings. I've been friends with Lauren for as long as I can remember. We met in middle school and have been inseparable ever since. She's the kind of friend who knows all your secrets, all your fears, and every embarrassing detail of your life. She was the first person I called when I landed my first job, when I had my first real breakup, and when I finally felt like I had found myself as an adult. We've been through everything together, or at least, that's what I used to think. Our friendship has always been the most stable thing in my life, especially compared to my romantic relationships, which have been rocky, to say the least. And then there's Jake, my ex, the guy who was once at the center of my world, the guy who made me feel like I had finally found something real, only to leave me shattered when it all fell apart. Jake and I met in college. He was charming, the kind of guy who could light up a room just by walking into it. We had chemistry from the start, and our relationship took off quickly. He was everything I thought I wanted. Funny, confident, spontaneous. I was completely swept off my feet, and for a while, I was convinced that he was the one. We dated for about 2 years, and I thought we were heading towards something serious. I pictured a future with him, and I thought he felt the same way. But Jake wasn't the kind of guy who stuck around when things got hard. Our relationship was great when everything was easy, when life was fun and carefree. But when things got complicated, Jake checked out. He didn't want to deal with the tough conversations, the emotional vulnerability, or the realities of a long-term commitment. He started pulling away, making excuses, and eventually, he broke things off. I was devastated. It felt like my whole world had crumbled, and it took me a long time to rebuild my life after that. Lauren was there for me through it all. She was the one who picked up the pieces, who let me cry on her shoulder and vent about how unfair everything felt. She told me I deserved better, that I would find someone who wouldn't walk away when things got tough. She helped me get through the heartbreak, and eventually, I did. I moved on, or at least, I thought I did. Fast forward a few years, and Lauren started seeing someone new. At first, she didn't tell me who it was, just that she had met someone and they were hitting it off. I was happy for her. Lauren deserved someone amazing, someone who would treat her right, and I couldn't wait to meet the guy who had put that sparkle in her eye. Then she told me it was Jake. I remember the moment she said his name, and the way my stomach dropped. It felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Jake, the guy who had broken my heart, the guy I'd spent years trying to forget, was now dating my best friend. It felt like some cruel joke, like the universe was playing a twisted game with my emotions. At first, I didn't know how to react. I wanted to be happy for her. I really did, but all I could think about was the pain I had gone through, the hurt that Jake had caused me. It wasn't that I was still in love with him. I moved on from that, but the memories were still there, lingering in the back of my mind. It was like reopening a wound that had never fully healed. Lauren was so excited, though. She told me how different Jake was now, how much he had grown since college, how he was ready for something serious. She told me how happy he made her, how she had never felt this way about anyone before. And all I could do was smile and nod, pretending that I wasn't dying inside. I thought I could handle it. I thought that if I just gave it time, I would get used to the idea of them being together. After all, people change, right? And if Jake really had grown up and was ready to commit, then maybe it wasn't so bad. Maybe this was my chance to prove that I had truly moved on. But it was harder than I expected. Every time I saw them together, it brought back memories I had tried to bury. The way Jake looked at her, the way he held her hand, it all reminded me of what we had and what I had lost. It wasn't jealousy. Exactly. I didn't want to be with Jake anymore. But seeing him with Lauren felt like a betrayal. Even if I knew deep down that it wasn't her fault. She hadn't done anything wrong. She had simply fallen in love with someone who happened to be my ex. The months passed, and Lauren and Jake's relationship became more serious. They moved in together, and before long, they were talking about marriage. Lauren was over the moon, and as her best friend, I tried to be supportive, but it was getting harder and harder to put on a brave face. Then came the day Lauren asked me to be her maid of honor. I should have seen it coming. Of course, she would want me by her side on our wedding day. We had always talked about how we would be each other's maid of honor when we got married, how we would be there for each other during the most important moments of our lives. But when she asked me, all I felt was dread. How could I stand up there, smiling and celebrating, while she married the man who had once broken my heart? How could I pretend that everything was okay when all I wanted to do was scream? It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't lie to her either. The thought of being her maid of honor, of standing next to her while she said, "I do" to Jake, made me feel physically sick. I had spent years trying to move on from him, trying to forget the pain he had caused me. And now I was supposed to celebrate his new life with my best friend? I didn't want to be selfish. I didn't want to make this about me. This was Lauren's wedding, her happiness, and I should be able to put my feelings aside for her. But the truth is, I couldn't. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I wasn't ready to be part of their story. Not like this. I started to avoid Lauren. Every time she brought up the wedding, I found an excuse to change the subject or cut the conversation short. I couldn't bring myself to tell her how I really felt, but I also couldn't pretend that everything was fine. I felt trapped, torn between my loyalty to her and the unresolved pain I still carried from my relationship with Jake. I tried to talk myself into it. I told myself that I could do this, that I could be there for her even if it hurt. But every time I imagined standing up there on her wedding day, watching her marry the man who had once been mine, I felt a knot in my stomach. I wasn't sure I could get through it without breaking down. It's not that I still had feelings for Jake. I didn't. But there's something about seeing your past collide with your present in such an unexpected way that makes everything feel raw again. It was like I was being forced to relive the pain of our breakup, the disappointment, the heartache, all while pretending to be happy for the two people who had caused it. I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't keep avoiding Lauren forever, and I couldn't keep pretending that everything was okay when it wasn't. But how could I tell her the truth? How could I tell her that I didn't want to be her maid of honor because she was marrying my ex? How could I explain that? Even though I loved her, I wasn't sure I could stand by her side on her wedding day. I felt guilty. Guilty for not being a better friend. Guilty for letting my past interfere with Lauren's happiness. Guilty for still holding on to the pain that I thought I had let go of. But the truth was, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to watch Jake move on with someone else, even if that someone else was my best friend. In the end, I knew I had to be honest with Lauren. I couldn't lie to her, and I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when it wasn't. So, I decided to sit down with her and tell her the truth. I didn't know how she would react, but I hoped that she would understand. When I finally worked up the courage to talk to her, my heart was pounding in my chest. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I told her everything, about how I had struggled with seeing her and Jake together, about how it brought back memories I wasn't ready to face, about how I wasn't sure I could be her maid of honor because of how much it hurt. I expected her to be upset, maybe even angry, but instead, she listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't try to defend herself or Jake. She just listened, and when I was finished, she hugged me and told me that she understood. It was a relief, but it didn't make the situation any easier. Lauren told me that she didn't want me to do anything that would make me uncomfortable, and that if I didn't want to be her maid of honor, she would understand. She said that she valued our friendship more than anything, and that she didn't want me to feel like I had to be part of something that hurt me. It was a difficult conversation, but in the end, we both knew that it was the right one. I couldn't be her maid of honor, but that didn't mean I wasn't her friend. It didn't mean that I didn't love her or support her. It just meant that I wasn't ready to face that part of my past. Not yet. As Lauren's wedding day approached, I kept my distance. It wasn't easy, but I knew it was the only way I could protect myself. I wasn't at the wedding, and I'm sure there were people who wondered why I wasn't standing by her side. But Lauren understood, and that was all that mattered. Our friendship changed after that, but it didn't end. We still talk, still laugh together, still share our lives, but there's a part of me that will always feel like I lost something in the process, something I can't quite get back. In the end, I realized that it wasn't just about Jake, or even about Lauren. It was about me, about how I hadn't fully healed from the hurt that my relationship with Jake had caused. And that's okay. Healing takes time, and sometimes it takes more time than we expect. I'm still learning how to navigate that space between the past and the present, between loyalty to the people I love and loyalty to myself. It's not always easy, but I'm getting there, one day at a time.